Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter 8, where we are going to be discussing motivation and morale. So, officer retention is hugely important to an organization. And what undermines officer retention most is going to be low motivation and/or poor morale. Part of the reason we want to retain officers is because training is incredibly expensive. It's also very time consuming. There's a lot of money and time invested into training officers over the course of a career. And if an officer vacates a department, all of that money and time that you've poured into him or her and their training is now going to some other department. So essentially, you're losing some of your resources. So we want to retain our officers as much as possible. Currently, officer retention is really low for a number of factors. First of all, baby boomers are retiring, so there's sort of a mass retirement happening there. There's a mass flood of career changes going on with people leaving law enforcement. There is a noteworthy section of law enforcement that, left as a result of the pandemic and negative sentiment that resulted as an outcome of the pandemic. So this results in the fact that most policing organizations and law enforcement organizations are currently very understaffed, which is obviously going to impact day-to-day operations. So what can we do? What are some factors that influence retention? Well, first of all, is going to be the economy. Officers do not get paid great salaries, especially for the work that they do. They make a solid salary, but not for the risk that they take, right? And in terms of if they were to leave the public sector and go to the private sector and go into private security and do the same work, it's actually much safer and you get paid notably more. So it's not the best financial circumstance. So the economy influences retention. If there's somewhere else to go that's safer and it pays better, people are going to do that. Poor leadership. This is something to always keep in mind is that people don't quit jobs, people quit bosses, right? People go into a job because they have an interest in it, they like it. Sometimes people love what they do, but if they have terrible leadership or a really inefficient boss or a really unpleasant boss, that's a deal breaker. So poor leadership. Dysfunctional work culture, inadequate recognition, right? That you're working hard, you're doing a lot, and you never hear any positive feedback. Inadequate equipment, right? That there's a lot of equipment in law enforcement, and it all comes down to safety, keeping officers safe and giving them the tools they need to execute their duties. And if that equipment is lacking or if it's old and it doesn't work, that's certainly undermining to retention. So retaining officers it's very important. And how do we do it? What can we do to retain officers? And the first thing that we're going to do, or that we're going to talk about retention, is the salary is not great, but there are a lot of benefits and perks to the job. So first of all, the health benefits are typically excellent because it's a very physical job, and we need to be able to make sure that there are adequate benefits to take care of any injuries or issues that happen on the job. There's also early retirement. Law enforcement tends to be a young man and a young woman's game, right? That we need people who are young and fit and physically active. There tends to be early retirement, 20, 25 years and out. So if you're starting at 22 years old, you receive a pension by the time you're in your mid 40s, and then you can move on to a whole nother career and earn on top of that pension. So that is a factor that retains officers. Motivation is another one. Okay, so motivation is that inner need to drive and meet that goal. But when officers are lacking motivation, for whatever reason, the morale of the agency is going to suffer. When the morale of the overall agency suffers and there's no motivation, retention starts becoming a problem. So there are some things that we can do, right? There are many things that undermine motivation, but there are things that we can do to shore up motivation. Things like recognition, things like making sure our officers are safe and taken care of. Attainable incentives, things like that are all things that that will make officers want to stay. There's also self motivation, and that comes from within the person, inside of the person. That most people go into law enforcement because they want to help people. They believe in the good, not the bad, and helping the community. They don't go into law enforcement to get rich. So there's a lot of internal self motivation because they feel like they're making a difference, that they're making a contribution, and that their work is helping. So what are some causes of an unmotivated workforce? Well, there's quite a few. So first of all, overwork. Too many hours is going to undermine the motivation of your officers. Downsizing is a big one. So not having enough personnel to get the job done, and you're spreading your workforce really thin and you're overextending people. Um, repeated restructuring, right? Where leadership keeps coming in and out, and with each new administrative leader, they have a different perspective and they restructure and they this, and before the dust even settles, they're out the door and somebody else is there. That's very frustrating for officers. And of course, work conditions, which we talked about. So negative public sentiment, lacking safety equipment, things of that nature. So how do we identify if there's low motivation in a given workforce? Well, you're going to see a lot of absenteeism. You're going to see people showing up late to work on a regular basis, constant complaining. They don't take pride in their appearance of their uniform and looking the part. They don't take care of their equipment, things of that nature. Lack of rules or lack of respect for the rules, lack of respect for administration. Those are all going to tell you that these officers are lacking motivation. Ooh, excuse me. So, what are some external or tangible motivations that we can provide to motivate officers? Well, like I said, salary is one. Officers don't get rich, but we need to provide an adequate salary to live on and to justify the risks that officers take on a daily basis, the trouble endured, the anti sentiment that they have to endure. So, we have to make it worth their while. Insurance, like I said, is usually very, very good for law enforcement. Um, they don't pay a huge amount out of pocket, and they have very, very good coverage because they need to. Retirement plans, early retirement, like we talked about, favorable working conditions, paid vacation, holidays, titles are another one, right? Giving commendations, giving attention, giving recognition. Um, so, like I said, compensation is not great, but officers also have a lot of opportunity to work overtime and to work holidays for which they get paid double time. So, there is an opportunity there for greater earning potential. Um, but there are also internal motivators that we can tap into that will also help retention. And those internal motivators are going to be intangible. It's not going to be money, it's not going to be benefits, but it's going to be things like recognition and, commendations. Just the good old fashioned warm fuzzy that everybody needs once in a while to hear, hey, you're doing a great job, or what you did the other day really was very good. We all need a warm fuzzy from time to time. Um, belief, investment and belief in the department goals, right? And seeing that the department and the organization is working to achieve its goals. Nobody likes to spin their wheels. Nobody feels good when they stagnate in life or in their professional life, where you're just literally standing in one spot and no matter what you do, there's never any advancement. There's never any gains made, right? So there has to be belief in that mission statement and those goals and the fact that we are, the agency is achieving something towards that end. Um, like I said, achievement, recognition, and advancement are all motivating. Building self-esteem among our line personnel. This sounds a little, touchy feely, but it's important, especially in this era where there's so much negative backlash towards police, who the bulk of which do a really good job and work long hours, and they do really hard work, and they deal with the unpleasantness day in and day out that the rest of us don't have to deal with, so that we can have an organized society. So their self-esteem can take a hit, and it's important for that to be a focus for supervisors, managers, and administration to build up that self-esteem. You can do that by giving more responsibility, more autonomy, of course, praise and accomplishments. But lacking self esteem in the workplace will result in a lack of motivation. In fact, it will probably result in something called a self fulfilling prophecy. And a self fulfilling prophecy is where people start living up to the expectations that others have for them. So if somebody expects them to fail or expects them to be lazy or screw up, eventually you're going to start eliciting behaviors that reinforce those expectations, and you're going to start believing what other people have labeled you as, and you're going to start engendering that role. So it's very slippery slope, very dangerous that we don't fall into that self-fulfilling prophecy with our officers, especially when morale is low. There are other methods of motivation. So job rotation is one, right? So providing cross training, giving people a new opportunity to learn something else in the field, right? Variety is the spice of life. Job enrichment, so giving somebody increased authority, increased responsibility. And you're going to see that if you give these things, you're going to see the benefits of motivated personnel. So you're going to see lower rates of sick leave, and you're going to see better coverage, and you're going to see more arrests, better investigations, better community and police involvement. So it's very important to keep motivation up, and it's very important to keep morale positive. And just to provide a quick definition of morale. Morale is a person's or a group's state of mind, their level of enthusiasm and involvement in their work. Poor morale is a job killer, both for the individual and the organization. If morale is low, people are not going to perform, and it's going to become sort of this snowball thing where if my morale as an individual officer is low, and I see, these 5 officers over here also have really low motivation and morale, it's just going to become this self-reinforcing thing, and it becomes, very threatening to an organization. Another thing that causes massively low morale is going to be poor leadership, right? Or a toxic work environment. That will kill motivation, it will kill morale, it will kill productivity. So we want to make sure that there's always good leadership and that the workplace is fair and that it's equitable and that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, just to sum up, how do we build positive morale? We talked about providing good salaries. Quality supervision and leadership is really important. Somebody who supports their staff, the line personnel want to feel supported by that personnel or by their administration. We want to provide safe and positive working conditions. And of course, fairness. Nobody likes a lack of fairness, regardless of how big or how small or what the context is in life.